So Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, who is probably, even though Bill Clinton is on that stage, probably the most powerful person on that stage during this panel, claims that climate risk is a legitimate factor in an investment risk.
We got to have money to power this shift, what you have forecasted as a tectonic shift as the world prepares for a decarbonized future. So how are we going to get from where we are now to where we need to go?
Well, the tectonic shift is happening. We're seeing that in evidence by where crops are being produced and where they're not being produced. So we are seeing big shifts, or because of heat and drought, we're seeing crops moving. And so we're seeing evidence every day that climate risk is investment risk. And people are waking up to that, and that's creating this tectonic shift. And we're seeing evidence, whether that is in sequestration of carbon, and we're going to be working with many large energy companies on the sequestration, because they own these big caverns that were once caverns filled with hydrocarbons, and now they're empty. And so we're going to be using that. And so we are not going to get to a decarbonized world unless we have the ability to sequester, carbon.
Okay, that phrase, decarbonized future, super creepy. So it's actually anti-human, because what are we as human beings? We are carbon. Very, very creepy to suggest that we want a decarbonized future. Carbon credits is what he's talking about here. And carbon credits, to put it very, very simply, is the government picking and choosing winners and losers. The government being the arbiter of what you are allowed to do, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in business, based on, oh, surprise, surprise, a social credit score when it comes to your carbon emissions. This is the government, again, controlling your actions. This is socialism, spreading the wealth around. It's equity, making sure that there's equal outcome and not equal opportunity. And who controls this system? The people on the stage. It makes you feel like you're doing bad just by existing, just by eating, just by living, just by working. This is an evil, evil ideology. But the people on this stage are actually glad that this is happening to us. They're glad of inflation. They're glad of the energy prices, because it makes it easier for them to try to convince us that this transition is good for us.
Because of the rising energy prices, we are certainly seeing the green premium shrink quite considerably. And so the amount of investment dollars that are going into new decarbonization technology is accelerating, and accelerating very rapidly.
Oh, well, there you go. Because of rising energy prices, we're seeing the green premium shrink. What does that mean? Let's translate that. He's saying, well, people were pretty mad about how much green or alternative energy costs, but when regular old energy, when that price went up, well, it didn't seem so bad then to force them to pay the higher green energy prices. This is bad. He is a bad, bad person. It's right there in front of us. We heard it with our own eyes. Our pain is worth it in their eyes because it helps them achieve their political agenda. And so, of course, they take it to the next step. He then goes on to say that he actually wants to change the world, which we know that's part of their grand transition, but he actually wants to change the rules and the laws of how finance is governed to force this on all of us.
But if we are going to change the world, there's just not enough money that's going to go into the emerging world. And we must change the charters of the IMF and the World Bank, or we're not going to get there. There's just not enough capital. It is estimated to decarbonize the emerging world is $1 trillion a year. We're talking maybe $100 billion is moving into the emerging world. And so, but there's huge pools of capital, but that capital is just not equipped to be taking the first loss piece. And so if we're really serious about the notion of moving the world faster so our children and grandchildren can have that bright future, it has to be done in a way that we're bringing all the governments together. We have to relook at the responsibilities and the roles of the World Bank and the IMF, and they play important roles. They have important connections with all these countries. But we need to find a way to stop thinking about a project here and a project there. That's happening, but it's happening at such a slow rate, we are not going to get there. We're fooling ourselves to think that one project, which may be a significant project, is going to decarbonize the world at the time that we need. And so we have to have a holistic review of how we are going to get there. And obviously we have COP27 coming up in Egypt and COP28 in Abu Dhabi, and hopefully in these forums that we are going to bring this together and start really thinking about it. But it's up to the equity owners of these agencies, basically the G20, and they have to have the desire to doing this instead of just the words. They have to have the desire. If we can do that, the amount of capital that's going to go into the emerging world, into Africa, will be extraordinary. And I do believe there is that opportunity in the next few years to do this. And then we will have not just a tectonic shift in the developed world, but a tectonic shift in all of the world.
Oh, okay. Well, listen to that key phrase. It's up to the G20, he said. What is the G20? The G20 are governments. So the private sector is just the start, is what he's saying. The fact that his company, BlackRock, that Unilever, that other financial institutions and big corporations have embraced ESG and are therefore forcing it on us, that's not enough for these global elites. They want governments to band together for global control.